I'm the Doctor. But don't call me Doctor Who, because that's not my name. That's the name of the telly show. Anyway, you're watching BritCon, and it's now time to settle down with a nice cup of tea and some cookies and watch another fantastic interview.
Alert, alert, alert! Time rift present, multiple doctors detected, Avenue Who.
Hello and welcome. I'm Charlie from Seattle, Washington, and one of a plethora of Dalek builders across the world. And with me today is Jason, the creator of Avenue Who. Welcome, Jason.
Hi, Charlie. It's such an honor to be here, and it's so very exciting.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So we have a whole bunch of submitted questions, and I kind of just want to dive right into it, if you're okay with that.
Sure, why not? Yeah, what do you want to know?
Well, first and foremost, where did the idea for Avenue Who come from?
Right. Well, I guess the initial idea goes way back into the mist of time to when I was a tiny little tot, and I was always a massive fan of Doctor Who and the Muppets, and you know, over the years these things sort of felt like they could marry quite nicely, you know, and so the seed was sown really quite early on, because as a kid I really wanted to be Kermit when I grew up. And also travel with the Doctor. So I think it was inevitable that Avenue Who was always going to happen. And then, you know, years later, I saw shows like Avenue Q, which you have over there on Broadway, and we had it here in the West End. And you know, the ideas were sown. But then, you know, I figured, you know, while Avenue Q could be a little bit naughty, Doctor Who is still so very family friendly, and so we're very much the nice side of the street, if you like.
Yes, I'm picturing a possible Avenue Who musical, but cleansed of certain lyrics that might otherwise have appeared in Avenue Q.
I could imagine, but then, you know, you've not heard my singing voice, so.
Fair enough. Who was the first hooligan to move into Avenue Who?
Right. Well, initially there was two. There was the first two that I did for the show, and if anyone's actually seen the guys, you'll notice there'll be similarities between actual existing Muppets out there. And so to take inspiration, I used Ernie and Bert from Sesame Street, and so I did Peter Capaldi, which was a very long thin head, and Sylvester. And Sylvester
kind of squishier, probably.
Yeah, a little round head. So he was very much the Ernie to Capaldi's Bert, and so those were the first two that I actually made and did some test filming with and ran around with. I even got to take them down to Cardiff as well, which is where they. I'm sure you're aware they filmed Doctor Who over here, and I was lucky enough to get on board the set of the TARDIS as well, and have them photographed around the sets and things
around
like that.
The actual proper set. Nice.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
That must have been kind of almost feeling like a homecoming then.
Oh yeah, and they felt like such at home. I'll point out as well at this point, all the characters are all quite diva-ish, and so you know, and so the fact that, you know, Capaldi was in his TARDIS, he was very much at home there.
Nice. How did you first get into making puppets, and was it something you had a prior interest in, or was this a new creative challenge for you?
Well, like I said, I've always loved puppets and things like that, and I had made them years and years ago out of, you know, old toys and things like that, and it was only, you know, literally, you know, sort of about a decade ago. I say, it's, you know, when you're as old as I am, 10 years is just a blink of an eye. So
yeah, well, tell me about it.
So I'd made puppets, and we used to do these. They were like a little gathering. Imagine when lots of Doctor Who fans come together and we play silly games and things like that. And then in the evening we would want to entertain each other. And I did a little show which was a Toronto version of Avenue Who, I guess, and it was called Donna Mia, and it had a very rudimentary sort of. It had a little. David Tennant and a little Catherine Tate as Ten and Donna, and that did involve singing. Yeah, well, you know,
you couldn't have something. You couldn't have something called Donna Mia and not have it be very yes.
And so we did a sort of a silly little parody of Mamma Mia, which had been out recently at the time.
That's funny.
So that's where it sort of started, you know. And so I thought, oh, these are great. I really like puppets. I love puppets. And so now what happens is we fast forward a little bit, and I've got a great friend over here, and he's called Phil Fletcher. Now, you might not be familiar with your viewers over here, but we have a TV channel called Children's BBC. And the host that's in between all the little links, there's a human host and there's also a puppet host. And the puppet host is a dog. And this dog is called Hacker the dog. And the performer of this particular little mutt is a friend called Phil Fletcher. And Phil Fletcher is an incredible puppet builder. And so he's a great friend of mine. And he encouraged me and showed me new tips and sort of, you know, and told me, you know, I should be using better materials and don't ever use felt. No, it's a dirty word. You have to burn that stuff. It's evil. But no,
I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have guessed.
So I have evolved now, and I use the proper materials within the puppets. So it's reticulated foam within the head, and then, you know, the skin is a fleece, and it used to be called Antron back in the day, when back in the 60s and 70s when the Henson dudes were doing it. But it has evolved because they don't make that anymore now, and so, you know, it's like a muppety fleece that I use as well. It's kind of stretchy and fluffy and gives them the right look.
Right. So they've removed all the dangerous chemicals and asbestos from the old fabrics, and now we have EPA safe things.
yeah, I guess so. But you know, it's still hazardous to your health. Puppetry, I mean, you know, literally, you're cramped under very small, tight conditions under tables and things, and your arms are like pulled into all kinds of strange contortions and things like that. And you're in a lot of pain. It's not easy. I can very much empathize. Being a Dalek performer myself, I squeeze into my Dalek, and sometimes I think my record amount of time inside that Dalek was 6 hours. So, good grief! You must have lost stones.
Well, the pro tip is use the bathroom first before you get inside the Dalek,
or wheel over a grid and just.
Yes, exactly. Urinate. Okay, so the other questions that we have here is, well, how about this one? How does one get into puppetry in the first place? Like, if I wanted to expand my Dalek-y horizons and get into some puppetry, like what would be my first step? I
guess
just make one.
Make one. You can buy them. I mean, you can get on Etsy, you can get on eBay, you can even go to Amazon.com, and there are puppets there. There are also different types of puppets. It depends really what type you want to go for. I went for the more sort of classic sort of Henson style puppets, you know, like the Kermit and the Miss Piggy and things like that, because I really do like that sort of flappy mouth type of thing that they do. But you know, you can do like the little glove puppets and things like that, and have a lot of fun with it. But you know, if you're going to do it, get a puppet, make a puppet, stick your hand in a sock if you need to, you know.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but if you wanted to sort of like develop it as a career and stuff like that, then I don't know, come back and ask me in another 10 years.
There we go. After your memoir has been published, right?
Yeah.
Well, we were mentioning a little bit prior to the interview that you actually have several different kinds of puppets. Some of them are, you know, hand operated and that kind of thing. But you were also mentioning that there's different styles for like the Dalek puppet and the Cybermen puppet, and I'm wondering if you can expand on that a little bit for us.
Certainly, yeah. So as you're aware, the standard to operate in a puppet is to put your hand inside the head, and when you open and close your hand, you're opening and closing the mouth. And the idea is to try and lip sync that to your hand, and that's the basic premise of puppeteering. But then sometimes you do get characters which are a little bit different, like my Daleks. Now, back here, they were inspired by some adverts back in the 1970s and 80s, which were for mashed potato. And we had they were called Smash Martians. And they had little flappy trapjaw mouths, and so they inspired the Daleks, the Dalek puppets that I made, which, famously, Daleks do have an eye, they have flashing ears, they have a plunger and egg whisk, but they don't have mouths, and that's one thing I really wanted to address with the Avenue Who ones, mainly because I didn't want the Terry Nation estate coming after me for copyright theft. So I gave them a mouth. And
he copied my Dalek's mouth is never going to be something uttered in court.
So that one is a trigger operated little puppet. So it's got a rod that goes up into the mouth, and it's on a little hinge with a spring. And literally there's a string that goes down from the spring, down a handle. And then when I pull the trigger, the mouth flaps open. That's how it works, you see. Likewise, with the Cybermen, they don't have movable mouths. But then I took the cue from the new series where they have a little blue flashing light in the mouth. And so really, my hand is just in there to hold it upright. And then I've got a little button, and I press the button when I talk, and that makes a little light flash. So,
that's really nice. Well, I mean, that then suggests that, you've moved beyond fleece and foam, and now you're dabbling a little bit into some electronics, it sounds like. Do you have a background in that?
Parts of electronics and plastic and even fiberglass and all kinds of resins and stuff like that, and lots of glue, lots of different types of glue.
Yeah, when I was building the Dalek, I became very, very familiar with fiberglass. I had never done it before, so I watched a lot of YouTube videos on basically how not to kill yourself on the fumes.
That is true. Well-ventilated area.
Well ventilated, yeah, exactly. What would be a typical, like if you were to craft a new hooligan from scratch, what would be your average start to finish time, or does it vary?
Oh, well, that would all depend on the character. So I could probably do one in a weekend. Oh,
wow.
And so that would because I've done quite a few now, and I do have a set of templates that I kind of like to use, which I know will fit my hand and will give a nice shape as well. So as they have evolved, I've created patterns and things. So a case of making a mouth plate so your hand feels nice and comfortable within it, then building the skull around it, then the fleece around that. The difficult bits then would be depending on the costuming and the accessories and the features and the wigs and things like that, because they all change depending on whichever character you're creating. So, for example, I've recently made a puppet of Missy.
Oh, nice.
And so as Michelle Gomez did such a fabulous job with it, what you'll notice is I try and recreate their costumes in a
there she is.
There she is. And what you can see from there is that's her her season. Is it the line? Do you know when she's locked in under the school?
Yes.
Behind the door in the vault.
Yeah, Bill's season.
That hairstyle, so that's basically all pulled up and frizzed all down. But then she does have another hairstyle, so she does have her Twisted Mary Poppins wig as well. So she does have a change of appearance depending on how I want to use her. But then, I've tried to recreate her costume. What she's actually wearing there is her Mary Poppins outfit with the brooch. And then later on, she has a little brown cravat with little red hearts on it as well, which is very cute.
Such an attention to detail. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I try to do that with all of them. So whether I'm doing someone like the Sylvester puppets #7, it's actually making a little pullover which has the question marks on it, and I try and match the fabrics as best I can as well. I did actually have a little bit of assistance, so depending on who we might meet later on, Jodie and Tom Baker have had coats made by a very talented friend of mine called Janet Weston, and so I've done, I can do some basic seamstress type work, but she's an expert. She actually works as we have a thing over here called pantomime. And so they're shows at Christmas which have really incredible, ornate, fabulous costumes and things. And her job is to create those costumes and stuff.
Wow.
So she's made me some little mini versions. So she made the Jodie coat and she made me the Tom coat as well. But apart from that, it does tend to be just me stitching away in the wee hours of the morning.
Well, I have mad respect for you for that, because I mean, especially as a cosplayer, like I'm wearing my 11th Doctor frock coat, which I did not make. Yeah. I found it. The earlier Doctors have such iconic clothing. Of course, I'm thinking of the 6th Doctor's frock coat and Sylvester McCoy's sweater. How would you go about, like, I'm thinking the later clothing would probably be perhaps a bit easier than the earlier classic costumes. Like what's the level of difficulty between the two?
I can just pop to any supermarket and pick up modern day clothes.
Right, exactly. But like a knit sweater with a whole bunch of question marks on it is not something you're going to find in the average thrift store.
Certainly not. And that was a massive find. So for any of you guys over there in the States, you tend to have a lot better merchandise than we do over here in the UK. And one thing I will point out is that there is a beanie hat that's out over there, and that has got the little question marks and the zigzags on it. And so Sylvester's jumper is made from a beanie hat, which I had to have imported over from America.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant.
There it is. So yeah, that's actually a little beanie hat there.
Oh, that's brilliant. So it looks so great.
And so he's wearing a child's hat as well, because if you imagine puppets, they're not as big as you imagine them to be, because they literally just fit the hand. So they tend to be a bit smaller than human sizes. And so, so child-sized clothes and things can be modified to fit puppets. So I use children's school shirts, because I tell you, making shirt collars is it's the devil's work. It's really, really, really difficult. And no one has time to do that. So I just buy those off the shelf. Right. And the hat that Sylvester wears is a child's hat, which I've had to modify and make a slight bit smaller. But yeah, on the whole, I do have to make most of it from scratch, though.
Wow, that's just incredible. I really, really appreciate the level of detail, because I mean, anybody who watches any kind of Doctor Who fan-made things, they're always going to very closely scrutinize the craft work, and from what I can tell from these pictures, it just looks fabulous. Like, really stands up to close scrutiny.
Well, that's it, because I figured, who is the audience? And I figured I'm the audience, and I'm the worst nitpicker ever. I go, oh yeah, that's nice, but the colours aren't right in that scarf, are they? Or there is an ace puppet which hangs around with Sylvester as well, and so I've had to find and source all the badges, scale them down, half scale.
Oh yeah.
And so all the badges are exact. There's no getting away from it. They have to be right.
Wow. That is daunting. I love it. So you were mentioning again a little bit before the interview that some of the puppets have various versions. Like how many versions of one single puppet have you made that like the most versions of, and why do you choose to do those upgrades?
Right, well, I guess the most we've had is for Tom. So Tom Baker did actually start off as a version 1. And the one that you're seeing right now is the brand new version 3, which is built specifically for the new show that I'm doing, a live show. And so I figured, because it's going to be such a prominent and well-used character, I really wanted to have the best version of it. So the original one was just a very it was a prototype. Version 2 was lovely, but just wasn't using the best materials. So this version 3, very much is the deluxe version. And incidentally, so this Tom is based slightly on Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem.
I can
So
see
you
that.
can see the sort of big grin and stuff like that. And he also has the big googly eyes of Cookie Monster. His eyes actually do move independently. So if I did want to move them, they can do that.
Just adds to his zaniness. I love it.
What you'll also spot there as well, you can see his waistcoat, and that's the actual pattern that he wore from like season 14. And so really, because I wanted to have that level of detail, I had it printed. I did the artwork on the computer and had it printed onto a cushion cover because that was the cheapest way to do it. And then I just used a cushion cover, cut it up, and made a little waistcoat out of that. So.
Oh, I love that. Well, how does one procure a half-scale Tom Baker scarf?
Well, one takes some knitting needles.
Did you make it yourself?
I've got several. Yeah, I've got lots of them here. You know, gosh, there's loads of them.
Oh my gosh. Can I commission one?
Turn my hand to everything. That's what I do.
That's amazing. What a skill set to add to the CV.
That's it. So, yeah. Plays with puppets and things. It looks very grown up.
I think you can expand on that a little bit. There's several bullet points underneath that one. How do you choose which colors you're going to give to each character?
Interesting question. Now then, sometimes I just go off gut feeling. I do actually start with a sketch of what I think the character is going to look like. And so there we're seeing Capaldi and the Sylvester. And as you can see, the Sylvester does actually look quite like the puppets that you saw earlier. So yeah, they're doodles, they're sketches, and it's whatever color that really does speak to me. And so because Capaldi as a character is very sort of grumpy, blue felt like a really good sort of, you know, grumpy character for him, where Sylvester is very light and jolly and happy, and so a nice sunny yellow seemed to fit his personality because they are all very, very different. One thing, the David Tennant puppet was very much more inspired by his costume. So famously, David wears a brown suit with a fine blue pinstripe, and I thought it would be really nice to actually lift those colours and keep them together with the puppet. And so he's turned out to be a nice sort of pastel blue with the brown hair, and there he is. So they were very much more inspired by his costume. So it depends really. So sometimes it's inspired by their character, and sometimes, you know, by what they're wearing. So
I was noticing on the previous on the previous picture that the blue of Capaldi goes very, very well with that red lining, and then with Sylvester's, he actually kind of just matches his sweater. So intentionally or not, there's this nice color balance between the fabrics and the actual puppet itself.
Because the Sylvester one, it was originally he was yellow with a little turquoise nose to match the sweater, but I found that the turquoise just didn't work for him, so that's why he got upgraded to orange.
So in between the different versions of the puppets, do they have you changed their color because you're just like, oh, that blue isn't going to work, maybe let's make him green or something like that? Or have you been fairly consistent with the colors throughout the different versions?
Well, funnily, Tom, the version 3, now has a very different. It has a different. You know, it's a secret. This he had a green nose. He's pale green. He's sort of an appley green with a big green nose. But the green on the nose was the exact shade that I was using for my green screen, which was just like horrendous because every time I used him, his nose would just disappear. So that's why I've rebuilt him, and he's got a turquoise nose now. So sometimes you have to, because of, you know, constraints of technology and stuff like that. What you'll notice behind me here is this is one of the backdrops that I created for Avenue Who, and it is essentially just a it's a canvas. It's a printed canvas. So I did all this work in Photoshop, and had it printed. And so that's how I used to do it. But as I've developed and learned new skills and stuff, I am using a lot more green screen to be able to put them into different environments and stuff.
Well, it sounds like, or at least I've seen pictures where you've actually done a lot more than that. Like, is it true that you have a half-scale TARDIS and a half-scale TARDIS console?
Yeah, because I figured all the puppets were really kind of that small. You know, what we're seeing there, that's Capaldi with a full-size console at the Doctor Who Experience. So that's the one that appeared in Ventures in Space and Time and was later used as the Bradley console. And so every time when we see that 1960s version, that's the prop that you get to see. And look how tiny he is. He's completely lost it.
Yeah.
So I decided to recreate that console, but half scale. So everything that the puppets do use, from Sylvester McCoy's question mark handled umbrella right through to having a half-scale police box and a half-scale TARDIS console, I build all of those. And so, yeah, oh, here we go. We've got a little video here popping up. And there it is. So that's
Look at that.
So that's made of all kinds of rubbish. I can point out bits on it. And so the little switches with the bobbles. So the bobbles come off little Christmas tree lights, little berry lights that you get at Christmas.
Yeah.
So that's those. And the sticks are actually felt tip pens. So that's what they are. And then there's bits of yo-yo and bits of ping pong balls, table tennis balls. And they're all just sort of hot glued into place and stuff like that. So, yeah. All kinds of rubbish just all gets thrown together, and basically exactly how the BBC used to do it back in the day.
This is the most proper use of recycling I have ever seen. This is lovely. How did you do the cylinder for the time rotor?
Right, well, that's a slight cheat as well. What you can see there at the top is there's a ring. It's just a plywood ring. There's one at the bottom, so I've got a top and a bottom, and I've just wrapped some plastic around it, glued it down the back, screwed it on around the top, and so yeah, the plastic cylinder is probably one of the easy bits. And I think, you know, I guess it looks like it could be the most difficult, but you know, it's fine.
Let this be a wonderful set of instructions for anybody who's watching who wants to get into this, because it just, you can create something so fabulous from just found objects, and it's just wonderful. So I hope that that's a good creative entry point for anybody who's interested in doing something like this.
Oh yeah, it's full of little bits. I mean, you can see there, there's little handles and things which just came off an old chest of drawers. I just cut them in half, sprayed them silver. They got all plonked on with a little screw so you can move them. You know, even there's little speaker grills, and they are dinner placemats, which I've just cut up and stuck on.
Just incredible. I mean, I built a Dalek, and I'm in awe of all the things that you've done. It's wonderful. Oh my gosh. How do you have to do all the hard work, like writing the scripts and well, we've already talked about building sets and making the props, but what about like the writing? Like what inspires you to tell a particular story? Well,
I have had a bit of help with a few of the scripts, actually the funny ones, from a friend called Steve Lyons. Now, he might be familiar to some of the viewers out there because he writes for BBC Books, and he does Big Finish audios and things like that. So so he's a proper bona fide writer, and he's another friend of mine. And I just sort of said, please just give me some help and point me in the right direction and make sure I'm doing this okay. And you know, I find that I do. So now I'm very much not just the showrunner, but you know, you'll know this actually from being a Dalek operator. Famously, to operate a Dalek, you sit on a little chair, you shuffle with your feet, and then with one hand you operate the gun. With your second hand, you operate the plunger, and with your third hand, you operate the eye store.
Yes,
yes. And it's very much like that with puppetry as well. So what you'll find here is if I'm doing multiple characters, I will have one character locked off or use a split screen, and I will do one character. Then what I'll find is then I'll have to stop, reset, and then I'll have to do all the reaction shots to it and then just edit them all together. So Yeah, it sounds really dull, but it is very much a sort of a one-man band. So I do write it, I do light it, I do build all the sets and props, I build the puppets, I perform the puppets. What's difficult as well is because I also have to film them as well. And quite often, what you can imagine is I'm tucked out of shot, so I'm hiding under tables and things like that with my arms stuck right up, operating the puppet. So I don't always see how framing goes, because you can get expensive equipment and video monitors and things like that, but maybe that's an investment to come in the future. But at the moment I'm sort of looking with a combination of like mirrors and things like that. Am I in shot? Can I actually see it? Is it in focus? Sometimes it would help if you had more hands, would be very, very useful. But yeah, so far I'm puppeteering them, I'm editing them afterwards, I'm doing all the voices and the sound effects and everything afterwards as well. So yeah, it's all
just incredible. Jason, the showrunner and producer and cameras and lighting, script editor. Wow, just a full list of credits that's just your name over and over again.
That would be great. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do an episode. It'll just be me over and
just
over.
Just you. It's just all
yeah. It'll be like narcissist of the Daleks.
I love it. Well, we are actually coming up on time, so I wanted to give you a final question of what is next for Avenue Who, and where can we discover all of this deliciousness that you've described?
Fantastic. Well, I have a presence on Facebook. That's where I started, and Instagram. So when I'm doing builds and things like that, I tend to do all the progress pictures and all the early doodles and sketches and everything. It all goes up on there. So but then, if you want to see the finished products and the videos and things, they're all over on YouTube. So basically, it's easy to find. It's Avenue Who. So Facebook /Avenue Who. Instagram, at Avenue Who. Likewise with Twitter. I think Twitter's Avenue Who HQ, because some swine went and stole my handle.
Oh no.
But then over on YouTube it is also YouTube /Avenue Who. But the big exciting thing is, if any of your viewers out there are in the UK in the next week, so coming up on the 11th and 12th of August, which is Wednesday and Thursday, we're going live. I have written a live show featuring 13, 10, 7, and 4. They will be in an hour show at a place called Norton Priory, which is up in the northwest of the UK in a location called Runcorn. Town called Runcorn, and it's very exciting. There are real actors in it as well, but yeah, it takes place as it's called Timequake, and it takes place throughout history. There's 4 little episodes, and we take you through to Georgian times and Tudor times and way back to medieval times.
That sounds wonderful.
Very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it. So we're right in the middle of doing all our tech run-throughs right now, and making sure that it all goes smoothly, and all the rehearsals, and even though to be fair, I'm going to be performing the puppets within a hide. It's called a puppet hide, and this particular puppet hide looks like a TARDIS. So it's a big blue box, and I'm inside it with the little hatch that pops out. So theoretically, if I forget my lines, I can have them written down on the inside, and no one will know. So,
right. With your little iPhone flashlight lighting it up, because I'm sure it's pretty dark in there. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time for this interview, and we look forward to exploring more of your creativity in the future. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Charlie. I've really enjoyed it. But
yeah.
So if you look at the moment, the YouTube channel has been a bit quiet, but that's because I've been super busy doing this live show. But
yes.
It will be back, and there's loads of new exciting things coming up. I promise you.
Excellent.
Will be seen, and there's going to be lots of little sort of spin-off, little short things as well, featuring loads of great brand new characters, because there are a lot of new ones that I built that haven't been seen yet.
Ooh, looking forward to that. Nice. Well, thank you so much again, and we will see you out there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was great! Hello there! I'm the Doctor, President-elect of the High Council of Time Lords, Defender of the Laws of Time, Protector of Gallifrey, and Eater of Unlimited Rice Pudding, etc., etc. You're watching BritCon! Don't go away! Is it me next?